Navarro leaned forward. What is it? The scouts we sent beyond the Veil Nebula have returned. They found something big. He placed the slate on the table. Hololight filled the room, shaping itself into an image of a vast region of space. At its center was a structure so massive it dwarfed worlds. A lattice of jagged stone and metal spanning across an entire star system, pulsing with unnatural energy. Dr. Joe entered at that moment, summoned by Rourke, and gasped when she saw it. What is that? Rourke's jaw tightened. We think it is a Cathari stronghold, not a single station, not a fleet, but an entire network built around the core of a dying star. The scouts barely escaped alive. This is where their fleets come from, a forge of war. Navarro studied the image, his hands tightening behind his back. He had seen many horrors in his years of service, but nothing like this. It was not simply a base, it was a hive. How many ships? Navarro asked. Rourke hesitated. If the scans are right, tens of thousands, maybe more. Silence fell. The hum of the ship seemed louder in the stillness. At last, Navarro said, then we cannot wait for them to come. If that is their heart, we must strike it. Zhu shook her head sharply. Strike it? With what? We lost nearly a third of our fleet in the defense of Sarethas. The Sulari are rebuilding from nothing. Even with the Threxel and the Drasari, we are not ready. Charging into that would be suicide. Navarro met her eyes. And waiting for them to bring it here is what? Mercy? The council was summoned again, this time aboard the newly constructed orbital station Dawnspire. Representatives of every ally gathered, seated around a great table carved from the crystal ruins of Sarethas itself. Navarro presented the hollow image of the Cathari hive. Gasps and murmurs filled the chamber. The Threxel Envy's antennae twitched violently, while the Sulari councillors leaned forward in dread. The Drasari representative, High Speaker Tovak, remained as rigid as stone, his face unreadable. This, Navarro said, is the truth we face. Every attack, every raid, every invasion, this is where it begins. A forge world, a factory of war. If we do nothing, their numbers will drown us all. No world will be safe, not Sulari, not human, not Drasari. Elder Serath rose slowly, her voice sharp. And you propose what? That we fling ourselves into that abyss? We have just begun to breathe again, Captain Navarro. You would risk it all on one desperate strike? Navarro's reply was calm, but iron lay beneath it. It is not desperation, it is necessity. The Cathari have always been the hunters. If we are to survive, we must become the hunters too. The Threxel Envoy chittered uneasily. Our kind has avoided the Devourers for millennia. To strike them is madness. Dr. Joe stood then, surprising even Navarro. Perhaps, but what is madness compared to extinction? Look at what we have already done together. Sarethas should be ash, yet it lives. You said it was impossible for the Sulari to endure, yet they endure. Humanity was unknown, yet here we are. The impossible has already begun. Her words fell into the chamber like sparks, and to Navarro's surprise, it was the Drasari who spoke next. High Speaker Tovak leaned forward, his cold gaze fixed on the image of the hive. We have always believed compassion is weakness. But weakness or not, you have forced us to see a truth. The Devourers cannot be stopped by hiding. They grow, they spread. Delay only makes their return more certain. The human is correct. Strike first or die waiting. A murmur rippled through the chamber. For once, the Drasari and the humans stood aligned. Alari rose then, her luminous eyes shining with conviction. We will fight. The Sulari will not cower again. If humanity has shown us anything, it is that even the smallest flame can defy the dark. Preparations began. The Guardians of Dawn poured every resource into building new ships. The Sulari offered crystal hulls infused with energy that pulsed like living flame. The Threxel brought their living vines, which could grow into self-repairing armor. The Drasari shared weapon designs, precise, ruthless, terrifyingly efficient. Navarro walked the docks of Dawnspire, watching vessels take shape. He felt the weight of it all pressing on his shoulders. Every weld, every forged beam, every bolt of light in the void, each one a promise and a gamble. Mbeki, his engineer, joined him as they watched a new human frigate slide from its berth. They are calling them Flameborn, she said with a weary smile, because they were built from the fire of Sarethas. Navarro nodded slowly. Then let us pray the fire is enough. Not all were convinced. One evening, as Navarro walked the silent halls of the rebuilt temple, Serath confronted him again. You lead us to doom, she said bitterly. You and your kind. You think yourselves saviors, but perhaps you are only hastening the end. Navarro faced her without anger. Maybe, but if the end comes, at least it will not come in silence. We will fight. We will not wait for death. Serath's crystalline face cracked with sorrow. And what of those who only wish to live? Children, elders, healers, will they pay for your courage with their lives? Navarro's voice was quiet. They already pay. Every day the Cathari draw breath, someone pays. That will not change unless we make it change. She had no answer. The decision was made. The coalition would strike, not with reckless abandon, but with careful preparation. Scouts mapped hidden routes through the nebula. Engineers built weapons meant to pierce the Cathari lattice. Soldiers trained side by side, learning one another's strengths and flaws. And amid all of it, humanity remained the heart. The Sulari rebuilt their homes, the Drasari forged weapons, the Threxil sang their strange battle chants, but it was the humans who bound them together, reminding them that they were not alone. One night, as the coalition fleet assembled, Navarro stood before his people. Look around you, he said. Human, Sulari, Threxil, Drasari, all different, all once strangers, yet here we are standing together. The Cathari think the void belongs to them. Let us show them it belongs to all who have the courage to live. The cheer that rose shook the docks, echoing into the stars. But far away, in the cold light of the dying star, the Cathari hive pulsed with life. Ships spawned like insects from its jagged frame. Their hunger had not lessened, it had only grown. And deep within its heart, something stirred, a voice, vast and ancient, that whispered across the void. The shadows of the enemy were longer than any of them knew. The shipyards of Dawnspear had never known such frenzy. Day and night, under the glow of twin suns and the pale light of Sarethas's surviving moon, a fleet was born. Vessels of crystal, metal, and living vine filled the void, each one a marriage of alien ingenuity and human determination. To walk the docks was to walk a world where the impossible was being hammered into reality. Navarro strode along the docking ring, his boots ringing against alloy flooring. To his left, a human destroyer gleamed with fresh plating, its guns fitted with crystalline amplifiers gifted by the Sulari. To his right, a Threxil war organism wrapped itself around scaffolding, its vines slowly hardening into armor. Further ahead, a Drasari cruiser loomed like a blade, its angles sharp enough to cut light. And between them all, workers of every kind toiled side by side. Human engineers argued with Threxil tenders about power conduits. Sulari artisans etched resonance patterns into hulls, singing as they worked. Drasari overseers barked commands in harsh tones, yet stayed long hours at the furnaces, ensuring every rivet was set with precision. It was not easy. More than once, Navarro had to step between crews when tempers flared. The Threxil considered the Drasari's methods brutal and joyless. The Drasari dismissed the Threxil as soft dreamers. The Sulari flinched at the Drasari's cold efficiency, while the humans tried to convince them all that different did not mean weaker. And yet, slowly, unity took shape, not in words, but in the hulls rising in orbit. Dr. Joe found her place not in the war councils, but in the training yards. She taught medics from every species how to work together, how to recognize wounds unfamiliar to their kind. Threxil blood clots in sunlight, she explained to a wide-eyed human recruit. Drasari do not bleed red, but if you see silver fluid, it is vital essence. Do not confuse it with coolant. The recruits scribbled notes, their faces taut with concentration. Joe pressed them harder. Remember this, your patient is not human, not Sulari, not Threxil. They are your ally, save them as you would your own. By the end of the week, she had a medical corps drawn from 6 species. They did not yet trust one another fully, but they knew how to keep one another alive. In the training halls, soldiers clashed in mock battles. Human marines drilled alongside Sulari spear fighters, learning how to weave light and steel. The Threxil fought with terrifying rhythm, their living weapons singing as they struck. Drasari shock troopers demonstrated ruthless efficiency, dismantling opponents with movements honed over centuries of war. There were accidents. One sparring match ended with a human marine hurled across the room by a Drasari strike. The Drasari warrior stood stiff and unyielding, expecting punishment. Instead, the marine climbed to his feet, grinned through a split lip, and extended his hand. "Good hit," he said. The Drasari blinked, then slowly clasped the human's hand. It was a small moment, but word of it spread through the ranks. Navarro held councils daily, but he soon realized words were not enough. He needed symbols. So he proposed something new, a ship not of one people but of all. The idea met resistance. The Drasari insisted their ships were unmatched. The Threxil claimed no craft could live unless birthed by their own. The Sulari feared that blending too much would lose their traditions. But Navarro pressed on. "We do not need another human ship, or Drasari ship, or Threxil ship," he said to the assembled leaders. "We need a fleet that is all of us, a vessel that carries our strength and our hope in equal measure." Reluctantly, they agreed. The unity was born. It began as a human hull, wide and strong. Into its frame, the Sulari wove crystal spires that resonated with protective energy. The Threxil grafted living armor, vines that thickened into resilient plating. The Drasari forged weapons along its flanks, rails and lances of searing light. The Alari wanderers donated gravity cores, stolen from the edges of collapsed stars. The Duras miners added engines of brutal power, steady and unyielding. Every strike of hammer, every weld of plasma, every note sung into its crystal veins, each one was a promise. When it was complete, the unity shone like a fragment of dawn, not beautiful in the way a single people might have made it, but beautiful because it bore all of them. The day of the unveiling was marked by silence. The crews gathered on the docks, leaders at their front. Navarro stood with Alari on one side and High Speaker Tovac on the other. Dr. Joe, Rurk, Mbeki, and hundreds of others filled the ranks. Navarro spoke quietly so that all leaned in to hear. "This is not just a ship. This is proof that the Kethari are wrong. They believe only in hunger, only in taking. But we build, we give, we share, and in that we are stronger than they will ever understand." He raised his hand toward the unity. "This vessel carries the fire of many worlds, and with it, we will bring light into their darkness." For once, no one argued, no one doubted. The cheers that followed shook the docks and echoed into the stars, yet even amid triumph, shadows stirred. Late that night, as Navarro walked the silent halls of the new flagship, he found High Speaker Tovac waiting in the observation deck. The Drasari's face was unreadable, his posture like a carved statue. "You speak of unity," Tovac said at last, "but unity does not last. I have seen coalitions rise and shatter. I have broken them myself. You cannot hold this together forever." Navarro did not deny it. "Maybe not, but if it lasts long enough to strike at the hive, to wound the Kethari so deeply they cannot rise again, then it will be enough." Tovac studied him for a long moment. Then, almost imperceptibly, he inclined his head. "Perhaps humanity's madness is the one thing they will not expect." Alari found Navarro on the command deck the next day, staring out at the growing fleet. "You look at them as though they are already ghosts," she said softly. Navarro did not turn. "Every captain does. We send them into fire, knowing some will not return." Alari's hand, luminous and fragile, rested on his arm. "Then remember this. Even if we fall not in silence, but in song. That is the gift you gave us, Captain Navarro. You gave us back our voice." For the first time in days, he allowed himself a smile. "Then let us make it a song the Kethari will never forget." The fleet grew, the soldiers trained, the medics prepared. The unity waited, gleaming in the void like a promise. And somewhere beyond the stars, in the heart of the hive, the Kethari stirred. The forge of unity had been lit. Soon it would be tested in fire. The day of departure arrived beneath skies heavy with both dread and hope. On Sarethas, The surviving cities gathered in silence. Families stood in crystal plazas, their luminous eyes lifted to the heavens. Children clutched lanterns that glowed with soft fire. Songs rose into the air, old melodies of sorrow transformed into hymns of defiance. Above, the void filled with ships. Human frigates, Sulari crystal ships, Threxel vine-armored cruisers, Drasari warcutters, all gathered into ranks, their hulls gleaming as sunlight caught their forms. At the center, like a new star, the Unity waited, every line of its hull humming with the promise of many peoples. Navarro stood on its bridge, the weight of countless eyes upon him. "Fleet is ready, Captain," Rourke reported, his voice steady. Navarro looked once more at the planet below. The scars of the invasion remained, but the fires of its people burned brighter. He pressed a hand to the console, as though anchoring himself to that light. "Then set the course," he said. "The time has come." Engines flared. One by one, the ships leapt into the dark, leaving Sarethas behind. The journey to the hive would not be short. It lay beyond the Veil Nebula, a place of shifting storms and treacherous anomalies. Maps were scarce, and even the Alari wanderers spoke of that region with unease. The fleet traveled in cautious formation, scouts darting ahead. On the bridge of the Unity, Navarro watched every report, every signal. Tension lay over the crew like a second skin. It was not long before the first trial came. The Veil Nebula greeted them with storms of light. Colors swirled like painted fire, masking hidden dangers. Great currents of energy swept through the void, powerful enough to tear a ship apart if caught unprepared. "Magnetic flux rising," Mbeki warned, her hands racing across the controls. "If we keep straight on, half the fleet will be shredded." Navarro's gaze moved across the display. He turned to the Sulari helmswoman at the navigation console. "Alari, can you find us a path?" Her eyes glowed with concentration as she studied the storm. At last, she raised her head. "The nebula sings. If we follow the resonance here," she indicated a twisting course through the storm, "we may pass through unharmed. But the path is narrow." "Then we trust your song," Navarro said. The fleet adjusted course. Engines burned low, ships weaving through narrow corridors of light. Vortices swirled close enough to brush their hulls, sparks of energy clawing at the void. But Alari's voice, calm and clear, guided them through. When at last they emerged, whole and unharmed, the fleet cheered. Even the Drasari, usually cold and wordless, struck their armor in solemn approval. Days stretched into weeks. Life aboard the fleet became a rhythm of drills, maintenance, and waiting. On the Unity, soldiers from every species trained together in the cavernous bays. Marines learned to move with Threxel vine warriors, their differing styles slowly blending into something fierce and unexpected. Sulari taught humans how to weave resonance into blade strikes, while Drasari drilled them in brutal close-quarters tactics. Dr. Joe kept the medics in constant practice. More than once, real injuries from training forced them into action. Each time they succeeded, trust grew, but there were moments of tension too. A dispute over rations nearly erupted into violence between Threxel and Drasari soldiers. Only Navarro's firm presence ended it, his voice cutting through their anger. "Remember who the enemy is," he said. "It is not one another." In quieter hours, bonds deepened. Rourke sat with a Drasari officer one night, trading stories of battles fought. The Drasari spoke with grim detachment, but Rourke noticed the flicker of respect in his eyes. Mbeki worked side by side with a Threxel engineer, marveling at the way living vines could entwine with steel. At first they argued constantly, but over time their arguments became laughter, each learning from the other. Even High Speaker Tovak, ever aloof, was seen observing the training with something almost like pride. Yet unity was not the only thing that grew. Shadows followed them. Scouts returned with warnings. The Cathari had begun to stir. Small fleets prowled the edges of the nebula as though sensing the approach of prey. The hive itself loomed ever nearer, its vast lattice faintly pulsing in the distance. And then came the test. The fleet emerged from the storm into a field of wreckage. Dozens of ships, broken and torn, drifted in silence. Some bore markings of alien races the humans had never seen. Others were so mutilated their origins could not be guessed. "This is a graveyard," Joe whispered. Sensors crackled. The wreck still carried faint energy resonances unlike anything they had known. Navarro felt unease creep down his spine. "Helm, hold position, scouts forward only," but before the order could be completed, the wreckage moved. From the shadows of dead ships, Cathari vessels stirred, not many, a small hunting pack, but their sudden emergence struck like a blade. They were waiting, Rourke snarled. "Ambush," the void erupted in fire. The first Cathari ship slammed into a Sulari frigate, claws tearing at crystal hulls. Another unleashed beams of searing dark energy, cutting through the wreckage toward the coalition line. "Return fire," Navarro ordered. The Unity surged forward, its weapons blazing. Drasari cannons roared, Sulari crystal lances flared, Threxil vines snapped outward to entangle enemy hulls. The air on the bridge vibrated with the force of the strike. Navarro watched as human and alien crews fought side by side. A Threxil warrior took the helm of a crippled human frigate, weaving it clear of destruction. A Drasari gunnery team fired from a Sulari deck, their precision saving the ship. It was not an easy battle. The Cathari were vicious, their hunger palpable. They swarmed, tearing at hulls, striking with inhuman fury. But for the first time they faced not one species, but many bound together by choice, not fear. And the coalition did not break. When the last Cathari ship fell, silence claimed the void once more. The wreckage drifted, now joined by the husks of their hunters. Losses had been taken. One Sulari ship lay shattered, its crew gone to light. A human destroyer limped with half its systems dead, but the fleet endured. On the bridge of the Unity, Alari's voice trembled. "We stood together." Navarro placed a hand on her shoulder. "And together we won." As the fleet moved on, carrying its scars, a message spread through the ranks. The battle had not broken them, it had proven them. For the first time, whispers began to turn into conviction. Perhaps they could truly stand against the Hive. At the edge of the nebula, the Hive itself loomed into view. Even at this distance, its vastness defied comprehension. A lattice of stone and metal stretching across an entire star system, pulsing with malevolent light. Ships poured from its heart like locusts. The crew of the Unity fell silent, staring at the sight. Rourke exhaled slowly. "By God, it is a world of war." Navarro's gaze hardened. "Then let us show them what Unity can build." The march was over. The true battle was about to begin. The Hive sprawled across the void like a living wound. Its jagged spires pulsed with an eerie, malevolent light. Ships streamed from its heart in endless waves, each vessel bristling with claws, spikes, and energy weapons that hissed across the darkness. Even at a distance, the resonance of the Hive could be felt, a constant, oppressive vibration that seemed to claw at the minds of all who approached. Navarro stood on the bridge of the Unity, his hands tight around the railing. Around him, the fleet waited, a trembling forest of ships poised for action. "Scouts report 3 primary exits," Rourke said, "each one heavily defended. The Hive will not let us near its core." Navarro nodded. "We do not approach blindly. Flank the left and right exits, draw fire to create openings. Our target is the heart. Everything else is a distraction." Alari's luminous eyes scanned the holomap. "The crystal resonance can amplify energy. If we strike in sync, we can destabilize structural nodes." Mbeki added, "It is dangerous. If we mistime it, the Hive will crush us." "Then we do not mistime it," Navarro said. "We move as one. Everyone, remember why we are here. Not just for Sarethas, not just for humanity, but for all who live under the shadow of the Cathari." The first wave struck with terrifying precision. Cathari ships poured from the Hive's left exit, swarming like predatory insects. Their claws tore through space, energy beams flashing across the void. The coalition fleet braced itself, and the Unity led the charge. Drasari cannons fired first, their light lances carving paths through enemy ranks. Threxil vines erupted from living hulls, entangling attackers and tearing them apart. Sulari resonance cannons hummed in harmony, each pulse shattering Cathari shields with crystalline precision. Human marines coordinated with alien crews, targeting weak points and repairing breaches even as enemy fire raked through their ships. Navarro barked commands across channels. Hold formation, focus on the spire nodes, do not let the hive adapt. The battle was brutal. Ships fell in bursts of fire and metal, screams echoing through comms. The hive itself seemed alive, adjusting defenses, sending new waves of ships to plug breaches. In the thick of the fight, a Cathari dreadship emerged. Its hull was vast, jagged, lined with spikes that emitted dark energy. It bore down on the Unity, its very presence warping the sensors. Rurk's hands flew across the console. "Captain, we cannot withstand a direct hit." "Shields are at 40%, Navarro's gaze hardened. "Then we fight fire with fire. Alari, coordinate resonance nodes. Mbeki, divert all available power to the forward grid. We strike together." Alari's hands moved in precise, fluid motions. The Sulari crystal on the Unity pulsed with energy, feeding the resonance amplifiers built into the hull. Vines from Threxil armor writhed outward, linking with other vessels in a web of energy. The dreadship unleashed its attack. Beams of black fire lanced toward the Unity, striking the shield and shuddering it violently. Yet the combined resonance from the coalition fleet held. With a unified pulse, the Unity and surrounding vessels struck. Crystalline waves tore through the dreadship's hull, and Threxil tendrils ripped apart energy conduits. Sparks of raw energy danced across the void. The dreadship shuddered and then exploded in a storm of debris. The victory was brief. The hive reacted immediately. Spires bent and shifted, sending cascading waves of smaller ships in coordinated attacks. The void became a storm of fire and metal. Human, Sulari, Threxil, Drassari, and even Ilari crews fought desperately, relying on each other more than ever. Navarro moved from channel to channel, coordinating attacks, saving vessels from destruction, and keeping morale high. "Do not falter," he shouted. "Every wave we stop is another step closer to the heart." Amid the chaos, heroism shone. A Sulari pilot, barely more than a child by species standards, risked her life to tow a crippled human frigate out of the hive's grasp. A Threxil engineer saved dozens of marines by using living armor to plug breaches in multiple ships simultaneously. Dr. Joe tended the wounded aboard the Unity, directing medics of every species. Her hands moved swiftly, weaving together knowledge from 100 worlds. A Drassari officer, previously aloof and unyielding, took command of a disoriented Sulari crew, guiding them through debris and enemy fire. The coalition's strength was not in a single species or ship, it was in trust, forged through months of preparation and mutual reliance. Hours passed, ships were lost, allies were wounded. But the hive began to crack. Alari's resonance network identified structural weaknesses. "If we strike here and here," she pointed to nodes within the spire lattice, "we can collapse the central framework." Navarro nodded. "All ships, focus on the nodes. Leave nothing standing to stop us from reaching the core." The combined assault hammered at the lattice. Drassari energy lances pierced critical junctions. Threxil living armor destabilized structural supports. Sulari resonance shattered the crystalline conduits. Human ships concentrated fire on key points, coordinating with every ally. The hive shuddered. Its defenses faltered. At last, the core lay before them, a vast chamber of jagged metal and living energy. Ships swarmed, firing relentlessly. Yet the coalition pressed forward. Navarro gripped the rail of the Unity, feeling the resonance surge through the hull. "Now," he shouted. A final pulse of combined energy erupted from the fleet. Crystal, vine, metal, and human technology fused in a single, devastating strike. The hive core screamed in a wave of light and sound, the lattice collapsing inwards like a dying star. Cathari ships were torn apart. The hive shuddered, its pulses of malevolence fading. For the first time in centuries, the Devourer's central stronghold was broken. Silence fell over the fleet. Smoke and debris drifted across the void. The surviving Cathari ships retreated into the darkness, leaving a shattered but a live coalition to drift in the aftermath. Navarro, exhausted, allowed himself a rare moment to exhale. Around him, the crews cheered softly, relief tempered by the knowledge of their losses. Alari touched his arm. "We did it," she said, luminous eyes shimmering with tears. Navarro shook his head slowly. "No, we began it. The hive may be broken, but the fight is not over. The Cathari will return. We must be ready." Dr. Joe placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then we prepare together." And for the first time, amidst the ruins of the hive, hope burned brighter than fear. The void smelled of fire and ash. Even through the filters of the Unity's sensors, Navarro could see the scars the hive had left. Entire systems lay stripped bare, planets barren or scarred by Cathari extraction. But amidst the destruction, signs of life lingered. Cities still standing, forests clinging to survival, oceans glimmering in pockets untainted. The coalition fleet moved from system to system, stabilizing regions once dominated by the Devourers. Human engineers repaired orbital stations, Sulari artisans restored communications networks, Threxil living armor rebuilt planetary defenses, and Drassari precision teams secured key choke points. Where the Cathari had ruled through fear, the coalition ruled through cooperation. Navarro stood on the bridge of the Unity, watching a newly liberated planet rotate below. Its surface bore deep scars, but the air shimmered with potential. "Status report," he said. Rourke's voice was steady, though exhaustion lurked beneath it. "Civilians are being evacuated from hazard zones. Power grids restored to 50%. Food distribution underway. Local forces are assisting. No major Cathari presence detected." Alari's glowing eyes scanned planetary data. "Crystal resonance fields are stabilizing. The ecosystem will recover faster than expected if human and Sulari efforts continue." Navarro allowed himself a small smile. "Then let's make sure it does. We fight to save worlds, not just to win battles." The first liberated city was on a desert world once mined bare by the Cathari. Its inhabitants were wary, distrustful of strangers after centuries of oppression. Human and Sulari engineers worked side by side, purifying water and replanting crops. Threxil sent living vines that grew into shelters and energy conduits, adapting to the harsh environment. Drassari teams installed power grids with cold efficiency, their work precise but effective. Navarro walked among the people, offering words of reassurance. "We are not here to rule you," he said. "We are here to help you rebuild. Your world, your future, this is yours again." A child, no older than 10 by human standards, approached him, eyes wide with wonder. "Will the Devourers come back?" Navarro knelt to meet the child's gaze. "Perhaps, but we will stand with you. You will not face them alone." The child smiled faintly and ran back to help unload supplies. Word of the coalition's actions spread quickly across liberated systems. Worlds that had lived in fear of Cathari raids now looked to the coalition for protection. Trade routes reopened, previously enslaved species were freed, and communication networks linked planets across vast distances. Humanity, once a distant curiosity to many, became a symbol, not of domination, but of solidarity. The Sulari sang of their saviors. The Threxil, quiet and cryptic, left glowing markers of gratitude. Even the Drassari, stoic and reserved, acknowledged the humans' role in forging alliances that had saved entire star systems. Amid the rebuilding, Navarro and his closest allies convened in council aboard the Unity. "Every system we liberate strengthens the coalition," Navarro said, "but it also reminds the Cathari of our presence. They will retaliate. We cannot just repair, we must prepare." Alari nodded. "We have demonstrated that unity can withstand the hive. Now we must expand that unity. More worlds must join us willingly before the Devourers strike again." Mbeki added, "Our fleet can grow faster if we share technology. If every liberated world contributes, we create not just a defense, but a network capable of resisting any attack." High Speaker Tovak, as always austere, spoke last. "Caution is necessary. Expansion without discipline is chaos. The Cathari will exploit weakness." We must temper optimism with readiness. Navarro considered their words. Then we do both, hope and preparation, together. The next months were a whirlwind of effort. Planets once forgotten were revived with the Coalition's aid. Water systems were purified, crops replanted, and cities rebuilt. Trade networks linked star systems that had never communicated. Medical teams eradicated lingering diseases spread by Cathari occupation. Schools reopened, and children of multiple species learned side by side. The Unity and its fleet became both guardians and teachers. Human crews trained alien counterparts in engineering, medicine, and combat strategy. Sulari shared resonance technology. Threxel taught adaptive living armor techniques. Drasari demonstrated precision tactics. Knowledge flowed freely, creating bonds stronger than fear. Every liberated system was a spark, and soon those sparks began to form a constellation, a network of life, hope, and resistance against the Devourers. On Sarethas, the people looked up at the stars with new eyes. Lanterns glimmered across rebuilt plazas. Children sang songs of survival and courage. Elder Sulari placed hands on human shoulders in gratitude, their crystalline tears sparkling in the twilight. Alari spoke to Navarro as they watched the lights. You have given them more than survival. You have given them courage and the knowledge that they are not alone. Navarro, silent for a long moment, finally said, "No, they have always had it. We just helped them remember." Yet even as hope grew, Navarro knew the shadows remained. Scouts reported Cathari movements far beyond the liberated systems. The Devourers would regroup, rebuild, and strike again. But now, humanity and its allies were no longer isolated. Together, they had become a flame, one that burned across many worlds. And in the darkness of the void, where the Cathari lay in wait, that flame would be the first warning. The Coalition fleet set course for new systems, ready to extend protection, rebuild civilizations, and strike back wherever the Devourers threatened life. The galaxy was changing, not through conquest, but through courage, unity, and the unwavering conviction that no species must stand alone. And at the center of it all, the Unity sailed forward, a beacon of hope in a universe that had once known only fear. The stars burned cold, indifferent witnesses to the struggles of countless worlds. Even after months of rebuilding and consolidation, the Coalition remained vigilant. Navarro knew that victory over the Cathari hive was only a beginning. The Devourers were patient, and their hunger relentless. Reports filtered in from distant systems, smaller fleets of Cathari raiders, scouting parties probing defenses, remnants of war creeping through the void. The Coalition had grown. Hundreds of worlds now communicated across a vast network of trade, defense, and knowledge. Every liberated planet contributed ships, resources, and ideas. Humanity had become a symbol of resilience, a spark that ignited courage across species. And yet, the shadow returned. The first warning came as a whisper over the fleet's comms. Scouts reported anomalies in distant star systems, fleets gathering where none had been seen before. Energy pulses, too regular and massive to be natural, radiated from the depths of the void. Navarro convened the council aboard the Unity. Alari, Rurk, Mbeki, Dr. Joe, and High Speaker Tovak stood with him. "The Devourers are not finished," Navarro said quietly. "They will strike, and when they do, we must be ready not only to defend but to lead." Tovak's antennae twitched. "Patience and strategy will be key. Rushing in will cost lives unnecessarily." Alari nodded. "We have built a network. We have trained soldiers, medics, engineers, and scientists. We have allies willing to fight. The galaxy is no longer alone." Navarro clenched his fists, feeling the weight of responsibility. "Then we strike preemptively, not recklessly, but decisively. Every world that joins us is another flame against the dark." The Coalition fleet moved, not as individual species, but as a singular force. Ships of human, Sulari, Threxel, Drasari, Ilari, and Dura's design flowed together like blood in veins. Their paths were synchronized, each ship aware of the others, each pulse of energy feeding the next. When the Cathari appeared, a massive fleet from the shadows, The coalition met them with fire, strategy, and unity. The battle was fierce. Ships were destroyed, heroes emerged and fell. Yet at every turn, the coalition adapted, coordinated, and endured. Where the Devourers sought to divide, humanity and its allies held together. Navarro, aboard the Unity, led from the front, not just with orders, but with example. He saved crews trapped in void debris, rerouted energy to dying ships, and coordinated attacks that pierced even the strongest Cathari vessels. In the heart of the engagement, Alari's resonance network struck critical nodes in the Devourer fleet. Threxel armor and Drasari precision tore through the enemy ranks. Human ingenuity exploited weaknesses no other species had noticed. Hours later, the Cathari withdrew, broken and battered. The coalition fleet remained, damaged, weary, but unbowed. Navarro looked out at the stars, seeing flashes of distant suns, the lights of worlds that had survived because of their courage. Alari joined him on the observation deck. "We have won again," she said softly. "Perhaps," Navarro replied, "but it is never final. The Devourers will return. And we will be ready, together." On Sarethas, lanterns lit the streets once more. Children played in rebuilt plazas. Adults sang songs of remembrance and hope. Elder Sulari spoke to humans. Threxel and Drasari gathered there. "Look at what you have done," she said. "You have shown that life, courage, and unity can survive even the darkest threats. The stars themselves have heard your song." Navarro stood among them, feeling the warmth of a galaxy reborn. He knew the future would demand sacrifice, vigilance, and courage, but he also knew that no single species would bear the burden alone. The Unity sailed onward, a beacon in the void. Ships of every world followed, a constellation of hope. And somewhere beyond the known stars, the Cathari waited, but they knew one thing: the galaxy was no longer theirs to take without challenge. And in that moment, for the first time in centuries, the universe seemed less empty, less cold. It was alive with courage, with life, with determination. It was a galaxy of many voices singing together. And humanity, alongside its allies, had shown that even in the deepest darkness, a spark could grow into a blaze that nothing could extinguish. The stars had called, and they had answered.